Previously on Transformers University, we wrapped up seasons 1 and 2 of the original Transformers cartoon, and we bridged into season 3 with our very special 50th episode, Transformers the Movie, and now we kick off season 3 with a 5-parter. It's time for the 5 Faces of Darkness right now on Transformers University. Hello, my friend, and welcome to episode 59 of Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Bricali, owner, operator, madman behind the website, the Toy Archive, the social media, YouTube channel, and more. And this time around, we are jumping into season 3 of the original Transformers cartoon. But before I get into this fantastic, fun 5-parter called The 5 Faces of Darkness, I do want to give a shout out to our newest Patreon, Joey Russell, who signed up at the junior level. So Joey, welcome aboard. I did not get to shout you out last episode, and I want to do so here. Now, if you'd like to sign up at the Patreon, help support the show directly, you can do so at patreon.com/TFU.INFO, TFU.INFO. That's patreon.com/TFU.INFO, and for as little as $1 a month, you can help out the show and receive all sorts of cool benefits along the way. So, this is the start of Season 3, and Season 3 for the Transformers cartoon is something quite unique in the history of television and in animation. This is a season that's entirely hinged on the viewer having seen the movie that came out barely a month before the first episode debuted. So, for those of you who are big fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is a lot like that, only 30 years prior, in that it requires you to consume a movie before consuming a TV show. Now, Season 3 will be the final full season of the original Transformers run. There is a Season 4 in 1987, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. And there's a Season 5, sort of. But this will be the final really long season, or longer season, I should say, at 30 episodes in Season 3. And there was a weird shift in terms of the time slot of this show. So this show, at least in New York, where I grew up, became a morning cartoon. So when Season 3 debuted, Transformers was moved to the 7:30 a.m. slot and still played in the afternoons on Monday and Tuesday at 3:30 p.m., all on WPIX Channel 11 in New York. And then it moved exclusively to the 7:30 a.m. slot, and then eventually moved back to afternoons around December. So that is a long time. That is basically a half of a school year to not have the show and not have new episodes play after school, but before school. So, and if you were like me at 7:30, you were getting out of bed and ready for school. So that was quite the shift in the show. Now, another shift in the show is the theme song, and I am personally partial to the Season 3 opening. I like this one, so let's give it a listen. You know, for me, it's the way the song in Season 3 opens and kicks off the show. It's that weird sample that's on the snare drum, and you know, the drummer, and I'm using that with air quotes, the drums starting on that hard ride of the hi-hat at like double time and then hitting the snare. It just sounds cool. So I feel like season 3 theme moves a lot faster and a lot better than certainly more than the season 1 theme, but even more so than the season 2 theme as well. But we're not just here to talk about the theme song and the time slot. We are also here to talk about the 5-parter, 5 Faces of Darkness. Now, the 5 Faces of Darkness is unique for the series so far in that it is a 5-parter. We have not seen one of those within Transformers just yet, not counting the cinematic movie. But the original pilot was 3 parts. The Ultimate Doom was 3 parts. There were a handful of 2-parters scattered throughout the series, but none of which were 5 parts, whereas G.I. Joe had 5-parters fairly regularly. I think by this point in that show, they had about 3 or 4 of them. So it's interesting to see the Transformers move to that format for at least one shot in 1986. And so this story here, written by Flint Dille, and is 5 Faces of Darkness Part 1, Season 3, Episode 1, overall episode number 66. And we start with a recap of Transformers the movie. And within that recap, things get set up by none other than Transformers voiceover, Victor Caroli.
It is the year 2005. The Great Wars are finally over, and the Autobots have won. But while the Autobots celebrate their victory with their new leader, Rodimus Prime, the surviving Decepticons, without a leader of their own and desperately low on Energon, have retreated to the burned-out planet of Char.
So this story takes place in the far-flung future of 14 years ago in the year 2005, 20 years in the future of the production of the show, however. And we start on the planet of Char, and that is spelled C-H-A-A-R. That's 2 A's in there, Char.
We figure we's a little Jews. No, we think that Jews.
And we start with the Decepticons desperate for energy. Astrotrain lands on Char with 3 Energon cubes, and the Constructicons fight each other for them. Astrotrain ends up going for a cube. Why he didn't just have one on his own before returning is beyond me, but the Constructicons combine into Devastator, but do not have enough energy, and Bone Crusher misses in his arm mode and falls off. They kick a half-transformed Astrotrain, and then Menosaurus sneaks up behind and uses his sword to behead Devastator, yes. And from that, Devastator decombines and gets his leg sliced out from under him as he just tries to combine again. From here, the Insecticons, who are not dead, try to get those few Energon cubes, but get shot by Cyclonus and the Sweeps. Cyclonus then bemoans the fallen glory of the Decepticons. We cut away to the Galactic Olympics, where Jazz is racing in some sort of competition. Not Blur. And Blur is kind of upset because him and Wheelie are being sent on a mission to bring Autobot City's transformation cog to Metroplex on Earth. And this is the first time that we see a couple of things here. So the transformation cog being one, and this is an important piece of Transformers anatomy as shows progress later on, including into Transformers Prime and the IDW comics of the 2000s and the 2010s. So just keep that in mind. This is a pretty important concept. It's something that is kind of the soul of, not the soul. It is something that is vital to a Transformer's life, is its transformation cog. And in a bit of an Easter egg here, Blur wants to know if there's another way to send the T-Cog.
Why not send a Galactic Express?
And of course, that Galactic Express reference is a roundabout way of referencing John Moshida, the voice actor for Blur, who was also the spokesperson for Federal Express. And if you go back to our episode number 49, Meet the Cast of Transformers the Movie, you can actually see a clip of that commercial. Now, at the Galactic Olympics, Jazz wins his event, and then we cut away to what I feel is later in the day. Now, a lot of people who watch this episode believe that this is directly after Jazz winning, because the winner of an event is named.
And the winner was Munka Spanka from the Argonon cluster.
Hey, let's hear it for Argonon! Attaboy, yeah! Way to go, Monka! Way to go!
So you can take that as was the winner of the event that Jazz was in, and that either Jazz has a new name or there is some sort of animation error here. I like to look at it as there was a cutaway to a wide shot, which kind of denotes a passage of time. It would probably be helpful if there was a dissolve in here between the two previous shots. But I see it as just an event later in the day where Munka Spanka wins an event, and it's not the same event. And yes, Munka Spanka is the joke you think it is. Also worth noting here, Jazz has no voice in any of these scenes because Scatman Carruthers, the voice actor for Jazz, died before the start of season 3. Now, at the events, there's some shadowy figures that contact a weird alien, and they set off a bomb. We see a Quintesson-style ship that we saw in the movie fly away, and the games are under attack by shadowy aliens, covered by a smoke bomb. Spike with Carly and Daniel shoot at one, and then we go to commercial. And there are some new commercial bumpers in season 3. And if you don't remember what commercial bumpers sound like, because it's been a while, here they are.
The Transformers will return after these messages. We now return to the Transformers.
And the ones going to and from break in this portion of the show, it's a Tripticon going to break and the Sharkticon as we come back to break. And we come back to Springer blowing up the torch at the Galactic Olympics, which provides some cover for the Autobots. The assailants are gone, but so are Cup, Spike, and Ultra Magnus. Springer and Arcee chase a fleeing ship, and we cut it back to Cyclonus and the Sweeps sneaking into Unicron's head, which is now orbiting Cybertron. They tap into Unicron's memories in order to figure out where Galvatron ended up, and we get another clip from the movie. And here, Cyclonus figures out where he is.
I can conclude that his remains lie on the planet Thrall, circling the red giant star Hydran.
And so we cut to the planet of Thrall and find Galvatron's arm in lava, and of course, he lives. Back on Earth, we get Blaster and Outback about to land in the nation of Carbomia. Yes, that's right, Carbomia. It is a nation that is in the Middle East, and because of this cultural insensitivity, Middle Eastern actor Casey Kasem actually quit the show over this. And so that is why you will not hear Cliffjumper or Teletran 1 anywhere, or Blue Streak for that matter, anywhere in the show from here on out. Blaster is with a thing called the EDC, which is the Earth Defense Command, and Outback, of course, has an Australian accent. He does not come with a bloomin' onion. It's worth noting here that Sparkplug is actually in the script for this scene, and they find Ramjet and Dirge hiding in the nation of Carbomia in jet mode, and Dirge drops this line.
Death comes to he who crosses me.
And that line is actually something that was cut from the Transformers the movie script. So Dirge, while on Astrotrain after the Battle of Autobot City, when the Decepticons are fighting for leadership, says, "Death comes to he who crosses me." So that line is there, and it'll reoccur one more time in this season. The Decepticon jets flee and are taken out by Outback's bomb. From there, he finds the coordinates of Char, which Rodimus uses to blame the Decepticons for the attack on the Galactic Games. Springer and Arcee continue to chase the ship through space that they were chasing, and they get caught by the old claw arm in the asteroid trick, and we go to commercial. This time the bumpers are Rodimus and Ultra Magnus. Springer and RC flee out of their ship onto the asteroid and find the base of the alien that was fleeing, a Skuxoid. And we met a Skuxoid back in Season 2. The Skuxoid says Decepticons paid him, though he is lying. And we find out the asteroid is a ship, so Springer and RC take it. And the Skuxoid is actually working for others. Who? Well, we'll find out. On Cha'ar, the Decepticons have a meeting, including Tantrum of the Predacons, who we have not met yet. Cyclonus and the Sweeps arrive, and they rally the Decepticons around finding Galvatron. They get the Decepts to contribute some energon to the cause. From here, Grimlock and Rodimus Prime are spying, and we get this weird interaction with Big Grim.
Me, Grimlock, not feel sorry. Me, Grimlock, laugh.
And ultimately, the two get spotted. They get attacked, and they get surrounded. And the Decepticons begin to fire on them, including a Seeker in Silverbolt colors. And we will be continued in Part 2. And as we bump to break here, we see a new one of new bumper that is of Blur. And that brings us to 5 Faces of Darkness, Part 2. Season 2, Episode 2, overall, Episode 67. And for more on that, I'm going to toss it to my good friend, Gabriel Owens, the Salty Seaman.
Hey folks, Salty Seaman here, coming at you with a review of 5 Faces of Darkness, Part 2. We are 2 episodes into Season 3 after the shocker of the movie. Took this episode as... I remember when 5 Faces of Darkness Part 1, which I also watched to, fill in any blanks I might have forgot. There was, because I did not seen the movie. It came and went from my theaters really, really fast. Completely missed it, tried to. It was already gone. Coming home and finding out if all the rumors were true, what had happened in the movie and whatnot, and seeing this whole new thing was something. And, I really liked the cliffhanger at the end. I was, now I was totally invested in the story, and it was promised to be this really long storyline, and we had the, I don't know anything about the Quintessons at this point because I haven't seen the movie. So that whole thing is lost on me. Slizardo looks very familiar. I don't know if I remember that I recognized him from The Gambler. I think I must have, because that was a favorite episode. Definitely intrigued me, and I was one episode. Part 2 was definitely one of those episodes I really was impatient to get home to go watch. I was super invested from that first episode. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at 5 Faces of Darkness, Part 2. Certainly one of the things that grabbed me was the new intro. It was so futuristic and cool, and it was such a change. It was like, oh my God, Earth's gone, Prime's gone. This is almost all new characters. And, time was guys I'd only known from the shelves. And I think at that point, what I knew about them was from rumor and reading tech specs in the aisle. I don't think I own any third season guys quite yet. I think maybe Pipes and a couple of the mini bots I could afford. A little before I got into the season 3 guys proper. But man, yeah, it was wow, there's that guy, there's that guy. Oh my God, it's oh, that's Rat-Bat. He's flying through the eye of the big Unicron guy, and it was it was awesome. That's one of the things really caught my eye for season 3. We get a full, I counted, 2-minute recap of the previous episode, Part 1. This is one of the more in-depth recaps you're going to get. I don't know if they stretched that for time. It really felt like they did, just because, there's just a lot of stuff in the exposition you just don't need. There's long, drawn-out shots with no narration or dialogue. Galvatron getting thrown out of the of Unicron's eye, and just they're just padding and padding and padding, which is not a bad thing. Especially if you missed the first episode, they completely caught you up. So we pick up from the last episode. Grimlock and Rodimus are spying on the Decepticons on Char. Grimlock is too loud, and Cyclonus, whose giant bunny ears apparently are really good at hearing. Surprised this wasn't Soundwave who noticed them, but I digress. They start fight. They're caught. They get blown off the mountain. They start fighting with the Decepticons. Rodimus's gun changes colors. Last episode it was red. In this episode it is gray. So I believe gray is my Rodimus is not sitting near me, but I believe gray is the correct color. And the Decepticons aren't able to shoot at them very well because they're so low on energy. Just something they really hammered home, I think, very, very well in the first episode. But it's another one of those. And I don't know if it's really a inconsistency, because there could be multiple ways they charge guns, but we've been shown in the past, guns, a lot of the weaponry had its own battery life, so to speak. It wasn't reliant on the fuel reserves of the robot, the Decepticon or Autobot, other than things like Megatron's fusion cannon and, built-in weaponry like that is presumably powered, but like handheld weaponry before was powered, which I guess still is okay because they don't have weapons to charge. They don't have enough energon to charge their cells. They couldn't charge their battery packs. But the way it's presented is as if the handheld guns are drawing directly off of the Decepticons, which is not something I think we'd seen before. But easy enough to explain away if you really want to try. So as Grimlock and Rodimus are getting the shit kicked out of them by the powerless but still having feet and arms Decepticons, Springer and RC show up in their stolen ship and proceed to rescue them. We see Rodimus is in really bad shape. I remember as a kid watching this, didn't look like he got, I'd seen Transformers get beat up worse than that, and they're treating, something that should have been, a flesh wound, seemed to, but I mean, just, you kind of let it go and okay, they're saying he got beat up really bad, other than Cyclonus' cheap shot at the end, you don't really, don't see a lot of why he was so badly injured as he would be. And then we get it's another scene of the sweeps. Cyclonus gathers up the donated energon, and they're off on their mission to rescue Galvatron. And we get what become a running motif of season 3, and I think it probably started last episode as well, of inconsistent number of sweeps, per which could change, when they change an angle, they go from 6 to 3 to 4 to 2. And here we have about 6, and as they fly away, there's only 3. It's really weird. We cut to our happy band of Autobots and Spike imprisoned by the Quintessons, and we get this joke from Cup, one of my absolute favorites of the series.
You are the Autobot called Cup. You are Cybertron's chief of security.
Nah, my name's Teaspoon, and I'm Cybertron's chief dishwasher.
So we see Cup practicing very good counter-interrogation techniques, as someone who went through a seer or prisoner of war training would know how to do. And of course, a vet like Cup, probably not his first time being captured. This little bit just made me such a huge Cup fan as a kid. I think definitely one of the last Transformers I ever gave up, I was well into my teens, was my Cup toy. I loved Cup, weirdly. But, they suss out, Cybertron's defenses. Despite his good techniques, they suss out Cybertron's defenses are good, but Earth, this other planet Earth, may be not so up to code. And, we realize... we also get a name drop of the name Transformers, as I pointed out before, despite being the name of the brand and the overall race of the Autobots and Decepticons. It's not a term they use a lot within the cartoon series G1. So I think it does. I think in Five Faces of Darkness we do hear it more and more because it's giving the origin from the Quintessons. But prior to this, maybe 2 or 3 times, I think, in season 1 and 2. So we cut back to Rodimus, and R.C. Springer and Grimlock. They're looking over Rodimus. He doesn't look so good. He starts to give a speech like Optimus, his time in the light is short. They're playing this super sad version of the G1 opening theme on strings, which I do not remember hearing before. I don't even think I've ever noticed before. It is so delightful.
My time in the light is short.
That's what Optimus Prime said when he was dying.
Springer, my friend.
He's preparing to pass the matrix of leadership to you.
His judgment is obviously impaired. Forget it, Rodimus. You're just gonna have to stay alive.
You must...
His life force has slipped away.
And also, as a kid, I thought Rodimus was pranking them. Like, he really wasn't that beat up. I thought that he was being over dramatic or silly. So I was kind of taken out of it, like how serious this moment was supposed to be, because I was waiting for the punchline. And then, of course, we get the upcoming scene here.
Nothing. No life force at all.
No! It's true, Grimlock. He's gone. We'll take the body back to Cybertron for interment.
Me, Grimlock, say he alive. No matrix of leadership.
He's right. If Rodimus were dead, the Matrix would have emerged.
But if he's not dead, where is his life force?
We get Rodimus seeming to die. Grimlock being super, super dramatic here. It's kind of like the part of him becoming kind of a buffoon here in season 3. But it makes me chuckle. But he's the one who points out, like, hey, there's no Matrix emerged. He must be alive. And we get the term life force, which is a part of a litany of different terms for, what would later become the spark, the soul, the essence of a transformer, the laser core, the personality component, the life force. They can't really keep their story straight. Thank God Beast Wars introduced the spark concept, and we've, maybe made that a bit complicated lately, but, it's an easy to use term for the whole thing, spark. So we get Rodimus going through the Matrix. It gives him a very Ralph Bakshi-esque, surreal kind of dreamscape. We see Prime's face, bunch of numbers, weird acid pools. Rodimus sees himself, and then we see Quintessons. And it's really trippy and surreal. Like, again, one of those things, like, what the visual art really took off in season 3 for me. Another reason I loved it so much. Just trippy stuff like this. Airing alongside this was, Rise Serpentor Rise on G.I. Joe. We had a similar kind of bizarre dreamscape with Dr. Mindbender. That was similarly, really fun and a really cool piece of animation. Cut back to Quintessa, where our prisoners are deciding to make a run for it, which we get through a bizarre description of a football game in some weird galaxy from Spike.
Makes you wish for the good old days, doesn't it? Before the fighting broke out, the Bears versus the Lunar Colony, it was fourth quarter, fourth down, 30 yards to go. You remember that play?
No.
How about you, Cup?
No, but in a jam like that, all you can do is rush him and pray.
Very weirdly out of place it kind of felt, but okay. They try to take a Quintesson hostage. They basically sacrifice him and dump all of them into the Sharkticon pit. And the point I was wanting to get to is just how many beats this miniseries takes from the movie, and I'll wrap up with that. But this dumping into the shark, which even Cup even points out, like, hey, we already did this before. We have another jump this time to Scourge and the Sweeps and Cyclonus are up to. They found Galvatron on this planet of Thrall. He's in I think it was supposed to be lava, but they at some point, like, I mean, that was what it was assumed to be. Then they're saying it's like an ooze. And Galvatron makes his triumphant return, sounding very different. If you saw the movie, he went from sounding like Spock to sounding like a slightly altered Megatron, because he is once again voiced by Frank Welker, or the essence of the character. And it's very, it is a slightly tilted up version of Megatron, but it is Megatron. So it didn't jar me as a kid. As again, when I saw the movie, Nimoy actually surprised me because I was so used to the Welker voice. And of course I wasn't aware until I read the credits, like, oh, they have like other people doing the voices for some weird reason. But we immediately see Galvatron is batshit insane.
Mighty Galvatron, we have come to deliver you from my empire of ash, my bastion of brimstone, my kingdom of desolation. Did I ask you for deliverance? Did I?
He goes on this wonderful rant to Cyclonus about his empire of ash. He writes a Nine Inch Nails song. It's wonderful. And Galvatron announces his return to the fold. We go back to Quintessa, and Spike manages to ask before they're killed, hey, what crimes did we commit anyway? They say theft. Say, hey, you guys confused with Decepticons. He says, hey, do you occupy Cybertron or not? And Spike is guilty by association, and they use that exact term. Brings up an interesting point. What's his name? Kranix, Arblis, the guy from the first movie who got sentenced to death, was also on a robotic planet. Maybe another one that was formerly a Quintessa-controlled robot planet that got their asses kicked off of by their creations. An interesting thought I never thought of till just now. Rodimus and crew show up and start attacking the radio for reinforcements, and start attacking Quintessa. They are relying on their self-defenses. We see a Gnaw in robot form, and a few others. It's always, keep in mind, there are actually several different races from Quintessa. Like two different versions of Sharkticons, two different versions of the Quintessons. Mostly we see here is the six-faced versions of them, which they become the most famous for. But just like overall, just the weird design of Quintessa. What was probably expected when they wrote the movie just to be a throwaway alien plot gag or a side mission. Now we are seeing becoming a larger part of the G1 story. Cutting back to Galvatron with Cyclonus, the Sweeps, and Scourge. They offer to be his elite guard. He basically beats the crap out of them for their insolence. Scourge manages to toady up to him enough to appease Galvatron's ego, and they take off for Char. Just more an enforcement of how crazy Galvatron is. They do a very good job here in his first two scenes. Let you know, okay, this guy is not right in the head.
I'd be remiss here if I didn't point out, during this scene, Galvatron was first coming out of the ooze on Thrall. He has these sparks around his head, which I'm guessing is to indicate when he's having a crazy moment. I don't know if this was intended to be a ongoing thing, and I think it's dropped by the end of the series. If I don't know if it gets past this episode, actually not watched them, but I kind of wonder, like, this was supposed to be a signal, like, of when Galvatron was losing it. These sparks, I think it's like 4 or 5 sparks appear right in front of his forehead. It's a bit odd, especially since it did not become a recurring thing. Maybe just an after effect of the ooze, possibly. So we go back to Rodimus and crew rescuing Cup and crew. The battle of Quintessa continues. We see some more powers from the Quintessons. They are apparently self-propelled.
as they leave the judgment seats to escape the planet. They're getting ready to blow it up. The Autobots take the Quintesson hostage they had earlier, still with them. The aerial bots show up, and it is a mess. Are the aerial bots separate? Are they inside each other? Is Air Raid wearing other aerial bots in one scene? Is Silverbolt driving himself? It's very, very weird. And it ends up with the Autobots boarding what it's very obviously a very giant Silverbolt, who then gets in I guess it's supposed to be a shuttle of some sort. And I guess it isn't an exact. It kind of looks like Air Raid. It's a real weird game of Russian dolls we start playing, but they are trying to escape. The Quintessons are blowing up their home planet. Say it's worth it. They're trying to get rid of the Matrix because without the Matrix, they feel the Autobot race will devolve into chaos and something bad will happen without the Matrix. Apparently. So this is episode 2. My overall thoughts of the whole thing. I'd have to it's been not too long since I've watched this before, but it's very obvious here just in the first 2 episodes I watched, how many beats they're following the movie. It's almost rehashing it to a degree, which is fine when I first watched it because I hadn't seen the movie. So that didn't become apparent till afterwards. And of course the movie is kind of a beat for beat kind of rehash of Star Wars. So Five Faces of Darkness this is a weird double recursive Star Wars clone in a way. But a lot of fun. I was totally on board for this season, and I remember as a kid having a lot of fun with these episodes. Back over to you, Ant.
Some things that Gabe didn't touch on that I have in my notes, as we usually do here. The recap for this episode, Rodimus's voice is different, and if you called our previous episode, that's because it was Ted Schwartz in the recap and not Dick Gautier. When the ship arrives to rescue Rodimus and Grimlock, once again, his voice is very bizarre in a few of these episodes, and he has this reaction to the bright light. Another thing worth noting in when Spike and the gang are being sentenced to death, in the scene where they're dropped into the Sharkticon pit, the Quints have screens in the Sharkticon pit to see what's going on. And I gotta say, they're kind of kinky.
Pay us no mind. We just like to watch.
And of course, in Galvatron's insanity, he does go nuts and shoots Scourge and the Sweeps when they try to rescue him, and then goes and blows up the entire planet of Thrull. So if you're keeping count of the number of planets Galvatron destroys in Season 3, this is number 1. And yes, there will be more than one. Some notes on the Autobot air fleet in this episode. There's a lot of switching with the animation models and things just being weird. The Aerobots actually arrive inside of Broadside in his vehicle mode. And there's a cutaway to the aerial bots that has 3 skydives standing around. And finally, in the realm of great minds thinking alike, during Galvatron's Empire of Ash line in my notes, Gabe mentioned a 9 Inch Nails song. I have the same 9 Inch Nails song as covered by Johnny Cash. So, my empire of dirt. Gabe and I definitely on the same wavelength as far as this episode goes. And that will take us to Season 3, Episode 3, overall episode 68, Five Faces of Darkness, Part 3. And first thing worth noting here is that on the some of the DVD versions, there is a different opening animation which was made for the Five Faces of Darkness. And I guess for whatever reason, only a few of these survived into the DVD versions. And it's not necessarily a different theme song, but the animation's entirely different, and so are the sound effects. And it features Autobot and Decepticon symbols flying through space and kind of a visual summary of the overall Five Faces of Darkness story. So the theme's slightly different, and we like playing the themes here. So here it is, the alternate Season 3 opening theme. So this episode starts with the Autobots' rescue as Quintessa gets blown up. The Autobot ship, Broadside, is, or we assume it's Broadside, or ship shaped like Broadside, is destroyed by the debris from the planet. And why are the Autobots floating in space like this? That's what they're going to do, just float in space for the rest of the scene. Cyclonus and Scourge are catching Galvatron up on recent events. They tell him of a space platform for humans that Galvatron wants to see. And they go there through a warp gate. Now, why is this warp gate floating in space like this? Blur and Wheelie arrive at the Earth Defense Base and are told to head to Earth as the Decepticons arrive via the warp gate. The Decepticons attack the base and destroy Outpost Number 1. And why are these humans floating in space like this? Decepticons go after Blur and Wheelie's ship, and they get shot just outside of one of Jupiter's moons. Blaster receives the warning on Earth and radios to the Mars outpost. There we meet EDC Captain Marissa Fairborn, and as noted in our previous episode, Fairborn, also the last name of the G.I. Joe character Flint, who will make a brief appearance later in this season as Dad. So at least the assumption at this point in time in Transformers history has always been that Marissa is the daughter of Flint, and that will be confirmed eventually. She heads out to help Blur and Wheelie. Blur and Wheelie decide to eject from their ship with the T-Cog. And why are Blur and Wheelie floating in space like this? Galvatron blows up their ship, and Wheelie and Blur crash onto a cloud. It's kind of weird, this scene. And the Decepticons give chase, and Galvatron shoots Wheelie.
Galvatron is strong, but Wheelie is mean.
And Wheelie is Wheelie mean. He shoots a sweep in the face. Yes, that's in the face, not in the head, in the face, who then loses his navigational control and plummets to his death. Galvatron responds by shooting a storm.
No, it's music, the symphony of destruction and the anthem of agony.
And speaking of destruction, we cut back to the Quintessons, who are gloating over the destruction of the Autobot Matrix of Leadership.
It is a day so long in coming that I am uncertain how to celebrate it. Perhaps a quiet chuckle. Very well then, let us chuckle.
And then the Quintessons instantly find out that the Autobots are floating in space like this and decide to align themselves with the Decepticons. The Autobots end up landing on a sticky planet that is named Goo, and there is a ship floating around this planet sucking up garbage. Cut back to Wheelie and Blur as they crash onto something, and Galvatron assumes they are destroyed. Back on Goo, the Autobots can't seem to destroy this garbage truck. Springer gets sucked into it and torn apart. The Quintessons then bribe the Decepticons on Cha'ar with Energon, and the Decepticons eat. Back on Goo, Rodimus is sucked into the machine and jams the gears of the machine with goop. And the one Quintesson that is also with the Autobots that were floating in space like this, Deliberata, is this Quintesson's name. He notices something he didn't know.
This is impossible! You were never programmed for self-sacrifice!
Back on Cha'ar, the Quintessons want the Decepticons to destroy the Autobots. And here we have some great animation errors, including a fairly famous cutaway that has all 5 Combaticons standing with a similar-sized Bruticus, the combined form of the Combaticons, behind them. Also, we find Fireflight drawn as part of the group, and that is the Autobot aerial bot Fireflight. The Decepticons vote to go with the Quintessons, all except for Blitzwing, and they board the Quintesson ship. We then cut away to Galvatron and company arriving on Ja'ar, and they find only Blitzwing. Blitzwing fills in Galvatron, and Galvatron is ready to attack everyone. We cut to Marissa Fairborn's ship and reports objects crashing onto Jupiter's moon, Io. That's where Wheelie and Blur ended up, and they're about to be attacked by some local wildlife. The Autobots on Goo are looking for a way to shut off the Goo, and the Decepticons attack from the Quintesson ship. And again, we have some bizarre generics in here, some great little animation errors, including a green Shockwave and an all white and gray Seeker Jet. So for those of you who hope for weird, odd colorations in the toy line, these are the ones to start chirping about. And that takes us to Season 3, Episode 4. Overall, Episode 69.
69, dudes!
5 Faces of Darkness.
She likes the dark.
Part 4. We pick up with the Decepticon attack, and there's some more oddly colored generics in that group, including a Blitzwing in air raid colors and an orange and red Snarl, the Dinobot, in that group as well. The Autobots are just walking in the goo as the Decepts lay down a lot of fire and just have some lousy aim. And then Galvatron arrives, and he's not happy with anyone.
Now, Decepticons, learn the price of your disloyalty! Attack! Attack who? Everyone!
And right before saying everyone, you can only hear the sound effect, but Galvatron shot Cyclonus in the face in that scene. So Galvatron, Cyclonus, and the Sweeps attack the Decepticons. And here we get a few more weird generics, such as Brawl, the Combaticon in Metroplex colors. The Decepticons begin to beg for forgiveness. The Aerialbot Skydive is in that group for whatever reason. Another animation error. And Galvatron goes to attack the Quintesson ship. On the surface of Goo, the Autobots find the control station, and turns out it ends up contacting the Junkions. We fly out to the moon of Io, where Blur and Wheelie are getting attacked by these bat creatures, the wildlife I mentioned earlier. And these are actually called light poles. And there's some conjecture onto what that name means. And I can only guess that the light is the kind of the bat portion of it. So like bats are nocturnal, so they don't have light, or they respond to no light. And then the poles, I would guess, means something like a tadpole. So they're kind of like baby bats, at least in terms of the script. And that's kind of what they are. They're these weird flying mechanical bats. They're red for whatever purpose that might serve for you as a listener. And Marissa arrives, and they all fight the light poles. Marissa shoots at them, and then the light poles transform into missiles and blow up Marissa's ship. Back on the Quintesson ship, Galvatron boards, and the Quints exchange info on a Decepticon matrix and offer to help Galvatron find it if he agrees for him and the Decepticons to destroy the Autobots. Then the Autobots are attacked on the surface of Goo. But the Junkions arrive in time to rescue the Autobots, and do so by sucking them through the bottom of the planet. The Quintesson that is with the Autobots, the Liberata, escapes. And then Galvatron destroys the planet of Goo. So once again, if you're keeping track on destroyed planets by Galvatron, that is planet number 2. He plans on destroying the Autobots, and we get another neat few generics here. We get a Seeker that is in Combaticon Onslaught colors, and we get 2 green and purple Constructicon colored Shockwaves. On Junkions, the Junkions rebuild Springer, and Rodimus really wants to go back into the Matrix. So he opens his midsection, he hits a button, he pulls a wire, and basically short circuits himself. Does he die? I don't know, but he does go into the Matrix. And once again, it's acid trip time. Whoa. And this is probably one of the most fascinating parts of this entire 5-part miniseries, is that we kind of take a journey through the Autobot history and meet all of the primes of the past. So why is Rodimus floating in the Matrix like this?
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Well, first he meets Ghost number 1. It's a bald Autobot with chin beard and goggles, and this would be later named in another piece of Transformers fiction many years later as Primon, or Alpha Prime, and he is the first Matrix bearer. He is voiced by Michael Bell, and here's what he has to say.
Eons ago, Cybertron was a factory built by the Quintessons to manufacture robots. There were 2 product lines, military hardware and consumer goods. These 2 product lines were the lineal ancestors of the Decepticons and the Autobots. In time, the Quintessons endowed their products with a simulated intelligence. Now, the machines could manufacture themselves. And before long, they grew too lazy and greedy to bother even with that.
So the Cybertronians were much like Bruce Willis, greedy and lazy, and we meet a new guide. And this guide would eventually be named Prima. And that guide is actually the punished robot that we meet in this scene of the ones growing greedy and lazy. The robots in this scene are then used as gladiators for the Quintessons' amusement, but some of the gladiators try to rebel and will be slain for it. The third guide we meet would eventually be named Prime Nova. He's a bit of a ghost guide, as I've written in my notes, and he has this to share.
That knew and felt the difference between freedom and slavery. And that oversight sealed their fate.
The fourth guide, eventually named Guardian Prime, recounts the early days of Cybertron, and we get some visuals of the culture on there. And for more on that, I'm just going to turn it over to Guardian Prime.
For a time, the robots lived in harmony, but this did not last. The former consumer goods, who called themselves Autobots, sought a peaceful existence, while the military hardware wanted conquest.
By the end of this scene, Guardian Prime gets shot and killed, and he looks a lot like Rodimus. And there we meet Zeta Prime as he gets the Matrix. From there, we'll meet the next Prime, Sentinel Prime, who we saw earlier in the flashback as Sentinel Major, losing the gladiator fight to Prima. Now, of course, keep in mind that a lot of these names, all of these names really, were assigned to these characters way after Season 3. And Sentinel Prime recounts his portion of Transformers history.
Knowing we could never defeat the Decepticons with firepower, we turned to stealth and invented the art of transforming. The Autobots ruled for many centuries. But in time, the Decepticons also learned how to transform. Thus, one fateful night, far below the city, Megatron was born.
This whole little segment's kind of like Transformers University within an episode of Transformers University. It's very meta. And we're shown the birth of Megatron, and he is being built by Constructicons. So we have... we have 8 Constructicons in the scene, so there are 2 more than we normally have. And then 2, this is the 3rd Constructicon origin. The first being in Heavy Metal War, and the second being in The Secret of Omega Supreme. We watch Megatron as he kills Sentinel Prime, and we hear from a familiar voice.
The Matrix was passed to Alpha Trion, the oldest of Autobots, who kept it safely hidden for many years, until the next Autobot leader appeared, a gentle robot known as Orion Pax, who was fated to become Optimus Prime. And so began the Third Cybertronian War, which rages to this day.
And the Quintessons are our creators.
Through all these centuries, they have waited for the proper moment to strike, to reclaim the planet that we Transformers took from them.
And now they're going for the gusto, right?
Do not forget what you've learned of our past, Rodimus. From its lessons, the future is forged.
So Optimus basically tells Rodimus that the seeds of the future lie buried in the past. And then Springer wakes up Rodimus, and the Autobots are headed to Cybertron. Galvatron and the Quintessons plan to simultaneously attack Earth and Cybertron. We get another neat animation error here, as there's a miscolored long haul in blue and orange, and it's in multiple shots as we see the Constructicons have built a city on Earth. And that city is Trypticon. He transforms into Dino mode, disrupting all the people that actually live in the city. Galvatron, the Decepticons use a decoy ship to destroy the Cybertron Central Power Station. The Quintessons reveal a plan to each other to let the bots and cons destroy each other so that they can win. And that is how we are left going into the final part of this 5-parter. And that takes us to Season 3, Episode 5, overall episode number 70, 5 Faces of Darkness, Part 5. The finale. The Decepticons ready their attack, and we get a few more weird generics, such as Sweeps and Cyclonus in various Stunticon colors, and a Cyclonus in Dirge colors. The Decepticons launch their attack. On Earth, Powerglide spots Trypticon coming, and we meet a whole bunch of new mini-bots rolling out from the Autobot headquarters. 2 of those new mini-bots, Pipes and Swerve, along with Warpath and Bumblebee, attempt to hide in a ravine and shoot under Trypticon, but it has no effect. And in this scene, we'll also end up seeing Tailgate and Beachcomber. Tailgate making his first and only appearance in the cartoon, along with Swerve making his first and only appearance. Trypticon then transforms into his dinosaur mode. We cut away to Blaster and Rewind transmitting to the EDC to send Skylinks to Io. This is intercepted by the Quintessons, who feel like they are going to respond by sending the Predacons. On Io, Marissa, Wheelie, Bumblebee continue to fight the light poles. The Minibots decide to make their stand versus Trypticon. Somehow Outback is now there, along with a miscolored Beachcomber as Wild Rider, and Pipes is ready to be a hero.
As Optimus Prime used to say, transform and roll out.
I guess if you turn into a truck cab, you get to say that line once in the series. Trypticon just kicks the mini-bots away. He even stomps Swerve into the ground. You can catch that in the previous episode of this show in the video version on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TFU.INFO. I definitely included the shot of Swerve being stomped into the ground. Trypticon attacks the volcano where the Autobot base and the Ark, though it's not called that in the show, and Teletran 1 reside. He destroys the volcano, the Ark, and Teletran 1, and then is headed towards Metroplex, who is stuck because he cannot transform. On Cybertron, Ultra Magnus defeats Ramjet and Dirge, and the showdown between Galvatron and Ultra Magnus is about to begin. But Galvatron decides to flee in order to fight a bigger fish. In the fight on Cybertron, somehow Bumblebee is there after just being on Earth. The Quintessons send the team of Sharkticons deep into Cybertron, and they're ordered to find the off switch for the Transformers inside the planet. So there is a switch that shuts everyone off in the middle of the planet. Why have we not heard about this before? And wouldn't it be in the Transformers' best interest to make sure that no one ever gets to that thing ever again? While they're talking about this, Blitzwing is spying and overhears the Quintesson's plans. On Io, Skylinks arrives to save Wheelie, Blur, and Marissa, but so do the Predacons. And they get beaten by the Autobots on Io, and then form Predaking. Skylinks defeats him by knocking him over. It's almost like playing with the toys. It's almost like the toy commercials, really. Wheelie finds the T-Cog that he dropped. They all board Skylinks and head for Earth. Metroplex, in battle platform mode, attacks Trypticon. Just then, Skylinks gets to Earth and is shot down by Trypticon and the Constructicons. The Decepticons are en route to Skylinks, and the Autobots here are on foot. The bots decide to play football with the T-Cog and eventually get the T-Cog to Metroplex. The Autobots cheer this victory, including 2 Constructicons that are somehow now Autobots, someone in dead-end colors, and Frenzy, the red one. On Cybertron, Blitzwing informs Galvatron of the Quintesson's plans.
Mighty Galvatron, there is no Decepticon Matrix.
Tell it to the Autobots!
If I must.
Or at least he tried to. So he does tell it to the Autobots, and on Earth we find Metroplex, now with his new transformation cog, transforming and fighting Trypticon. The fight spills into a nearby city in a very Godzilla-styled scene. Metroplex then tosses Trypticon into the ocean. The Autobots cheer, and in some more weird generics, we get a white Cliffjumper, Sunstreaker, Blaster, and a blaster-colored Ratchet, along with a white-colored Ironhide. So either they are both not dead and in the wrong colors, or those are 2 new characters in their body types. Beneath Cybertron, the Autobots arrive in time to stop the Sharkticons with Blitzwing and Spike. Galvatron arrives and accuses Blitzwing of wanting the quote-unquote Decepticon Matrix for himself. He then throws the off switch, which freezes everyone. The Quintessons return to Cybertron, thinking they're victorious, but Spike, not affected by the off switch, grabs a gun, shoots the lever to the machine, and destroys it, and everyone is reactivated. This is something that should have been done centuries ago. The Quintessons flee, and Galvatron and Rodimus square off, but Blitzwing decides to step in.
Enough! This battle ends now, or I shall write its conclusion.
You will never be welcome in the ranks of the Decepticons again!
Sometimes it's better to be known for one's enemies.
You will suffer for this, Blitzwing. You will suffer unimaginably.
So a lot of good that did Blitzwing for being loyal. The Decepticons flee, Blitzwing is ostracized, and the Autobots win the day. And that wraps up 5 Faces of Darkness. And so overall, my thoughts on this 5-parter, it's got a nice chunk of Transformers lore. It is loaded with weirdness and animation errors, and it's not good at times, and it's great at other times. So go watch this one. This one's fun at the very least, and it definitely sets up this big tonal shift that we will have in Season 3, where we go from being Earth-based to being space-based, and Season 3 being probably the closest to hard science fiction that Transformers will be in its early stages. And so that wraps up this episode of Transformers University. As always, if you'd like to support the show, please swing on by to our Patreon, patreon.com/TFU.INFO. For as little as $1 a month, you can sign up and help out the show and get a whole bunch of extra goodies along the way. If you don't want to do that, please use our Amazon links, TFU.INFO/Amazon. That will take you to Amazon.com, and then anything you buy doesn't cost you any more than you normally would spend there, but Amazon kicks some pennies back to us. And of course, you can follow us on all of the social media. Twitter, that's where you really talk to me because that's where I am the most. Twitter.com/TFU_info. Facebook, Facebook.com/TFU.INFO. Instagram.com/TFU.INFO. And of course, the YouTube channel, YouTube.com/TFU.INFO, where you can catch some video versions of this show, as along with every episode of the show and so much more. Our Toy Fair coverage, our New York Comic Con coverage. I just got approved for my press pass for New York Comic Con 2019, so we will be there in October. And so much more. Toy reviews and all sorts of other things. And I'm trying to do a little bit more with the YouTube channel. Don't know if I will be doing it soon, but I have some ideas percolating and some things I'm testing out. So definitely, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please click the subscribe button, click the alert button so that you get updated with all the latest over there. As always, I want to thank you, the listener, for joining me on this ride. Can't do it without you, and I really do like hearing from you, so please definitely send me some feedback. Love knowing what you like about the show. Next time on the show, we are going back to Japan, and we are going to talk about a particular magazine in Japan that did some very exclusive Transformers comics, a magazine called Comic Bomb Bomb, and the stories that they published in 1986. So be sure to come back for that. We're covering all sorts of stuff here as we go through 1986. So until next time, I am your host, Anthony Bricali, owner, operator, madman behind TFU.INFO. See ya.